And bam, it is up. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, welcome to the MCC Virtual Business Box Lunch. It says live streaming, but this damn thing is taking its due time to get in there. There we go. Now we're into the right spot. Woo, now I can hear myself ranting and raving. Love it. Absolutely love it. Anyway, as always, this is the Mitch Kamich Coaching MCC Virtual Business Box Lunch. I'm your host, Mitch Kamich. Today, I am the broker of certainty. As always, I am joined by my brothers from other mothers, Paul and Matt. And on my screen, I got Paul there and I got Matt over here. And they're also repping the brand stuff. And just about like always, I got my other brother from another mother, the always energetic and intelligent Don Verboom. I got my queen of battle, Lorette Lee. She's right under me on my screen there. And Yulia Crookshank from Epic Experiences, who seems to show up all the damn time too, is in that bottom corner. She'll turn on the camera here in a moment. And the Virtual Business Box Lunch, what is this? This is for us to get together and talk about the week that was in business. Trends, ideas, tips, tricks. We've talked about cryptocurrency. We've talked about AI. We've talked about investment. We've talked about real estate. We've talked about HR and hiring. We've talked about the trends. We've talked about supply. We've talked about all these different things that have an effect on our personal lives, our businesses, affect our business directly, and how we make money and how to navigate them going forward. We bring together really smart people that are really good at their job. Lorette's a career development specialist. Yulia, she literally develops experiences for businesses and people in their lives. Don, of course, is a business coach, just like Paul and Matt and I. And so we put decades of experience in life and in business on this call to just talk about, well, whatever I decide the topics are going to be on a given week. And as always, one of the great parts about this, nobody else has a clue what I've picked until I kind of lay it out there, sandbag everybody and say, this is what we're going to solve this week. Sometimes it's arguments. It's always entertaining. And more than that, it's educational. So I got a little bit of button pushing to do in the back end. I'm going to turn the floor over to these guys and everybody else to introduce themselves. And then we're going to get into the week that was in business. As always, we got stuff that's relevant to right now. Could be local, could be regional, could be national, or could have international flavor. And as always, wait, we got one extra theme. This week's episode is brought to you by Be Prepared, because you never know what's going to happen next. So be prepared, brothers and sisters, because we don't know. Yeah, that's right. There we go. Paul, Matt, take it away.
Hey, I'm Paul Falkowski, one of the coaches here with MCC. I am a broker of certainty, and I love solving people's problems, especially when it comes to business. We know that there's 5 commonalities for all businesses. There's threads that run through them, and I love digging into them and getting my hands dirty and straightening everything out. So at the end of the day, you have more time and more money.
Awesome, Paul. You're hired. I want you too. Anyway, Matt Hewson, also part of the MCC brand. I've been working with clients, friends, family to make sure that when they go to bed, they can rest and they're not waking up in a panic. So realistically, it's a very strange time. Just when we thought we were out of this whole strange world, something else comes up and guess what? We got to go to work. So I just want to be able to help, assist, and make sure that if you have a hard question, we can get through it and provide the answer so that when you do get home to your family, you can spend some time and that you can rest at night.
Don. Hey, Don Verboom, 4Tree Coaching, here serving in North America with all small and mid-sized business advice. Yeah, a lot of times we deal with people with problems, but there are so many people who are just killing it, but need help to kind of maximize their businesses. You know, there's lots of times you just got to talk them through it, figure out what the next step is. It's super exciting to kind of help those entrepreneurs who are really driving it, and they need help too. They don't know everything, and I'd love to get a chance to talk to them.
My name is Lorette Lee from Phoenix Career Development. We create careers, we clarify careers, and we enhance your careers. So if you hate your job, have a conversation with me.
Yulia, bring it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yulia Cruikshank, the founder of Epic Experiences. We specialize, it's an online platform that specializes in unique experience gifts and adventure tours. And we provide a convenient gift shopping and gift giving solution for all your personal and corporate needs.
And since we have a secret word of the day, Paul, do we announce it out loud? No? Okay. Secret word of the day. Okay. Badass. I love it. All right, let's get to it. Now, we're staring up the butt end of a potential worldwide conflict. No, not Ukraine. Not Ukraine. Money. Straight up 100% money. Inflation hit everywhere hard, but it's not the first time that inflation's ever come knocking on our door. Now, you don't think of it as inflation because you leave your house and go put gas in your vehicle. You don't think of it as inflation when you go to the grocery store and buy food and milk and eggs and bread, never mind the good stuff. Who doesn't like potato chips, right? Who doesn't like a nice steak? You know, who doesn't like a bag of candy? Easter's coming up. You're in North America, you're going to load up on Easter candy, whether or not you're religious. Why? Because candy's delicious. It's good stuff, right? It makes you happy. Chocolate, in fact, has a proven effect on the endorphin and the joy receptors in your brain, similar to love, biological love. Lorette's like, love chocolate. Love it, right? Right here, Chocoholic. We only recognize that milk's more expensive. We only recognize that gas is more expensive. We only recognize that bread's more expensive, potato chips are more expensive, steak's more expensive, running shoes are more expensive, t-shirts are more expensive. All of it's more expensive. It's not. The value of the dollar in your pocket started to shrink. The actual dollar, the tangible figure. Take out this thing for a moment, and I'm going on a bit of a rant first before I start really getting the panel, the tribe here to talk about it. Take out the device for a moment and go to your banking app right now. Now, unless you buy something in the next hour or next 2 hours or tomorrow morning when you wake up or an automated bill comes out, the amount of money between now and then is going to pretty much be the same. If it says $4 or $400 or $4,000 or $40,000 or $400,000 or $4 million, a lot of people go, $4 million would be pretty nice, but I'd settle for 400,000. Okay. All of it by tomorrow morning, even though it hasn't changed from $4 to $4 million, will be worth less buying power than it was today. And today it's worth less buying power than it was a week ago. So if you spent nothing over the past week and you got $4 or $4 million, that can buy you less things now than they did a month ago. Because of that, prices start to go up. They do. Why? Because when I pay for something, when I buy pens or I buy phones or I buy bread or potato chips, the cost of production, because for me to get a potato chip or a phone or a pen, starts to escalate because there's less dollar to go around to buy the same amount. One of the ways that that gets combated right now, and if you've been in the grocery store in the last 2 weeks, you will have seen a month ago the price of, let's say, meat going up. If you buy meat, if you're a vegetarian, then you wouldn't have noticed it, but you will have noticed the price of produce going up, etc. You would have noticed that going up. And then if you've gone in the last 2 weeks, what would you have noticed? Your expectation, your perception of $5 or $6 or $7 for a pound of hamburger, suddenly you could find $5 or $6 or $7 hamburger. And you go, great, they must have fixed this. Until you lean in and look at the amount of ground meat in that package. It's smaller. Until you start to look at the sizing for things like candy and chips, etc., packaging is starting to shrink. Coca-Cola, as an example for a brand, has been getting us ready for this for years when they introduced the 100 ml can instead of the 220 ml can. So I'm taking a long entry to this point because not everybody is selling potato chips. Not everybody is selling cans of pop, and not everybody is selling a liter or a gallon of gas. But everybody that owns a business that may be watching right now is selling something. So how do people make an empirical decision or a really good choice right now, when it comes to their business, when it feels like people have got less money, when they really don't, money just goes far. It has less mileage in it. The gas tank just has less to go on with the amount of gas, with the amount of cash we have, even if it doesn't change from today to tomorrow. What do business owners need to start to do now? Now, again, we've talked about bills and all this other stuff. That's not what I mean. I'm actually talking about their price. I'm telling them products or services. What do? Do we hold fast? Do we start to adjust our price? Do we track and chase inflation by increasing it? Or do we keep the price the same and start to reduce the amount of ground meat or potato chips that we're putting in our packaging? Now, you sell a service, like, how do I do that? Okay, how do you do that? But what do we do? So my first question for the panel today is, are we as business owners going to chase the same dollar? Chase the same dollar for the same feature? Start to reduce our features or the things that people get for that dollar? Or are we going to start increasing the price? What is best practice for people out there? And that can mean anything to anybody. But if you're in a service business or a product business, that can be two different strategies entirely. So it's a bit of a deep hole that I went down, and a lot of preamble to get us there. But the amount of money we put in our pocket, and again, $4 to $4 million, by tomorrow morning will buy less stuff than it did before. And by the way, I've already checked the little box, so let's get this out of the way. It'll buy a lot less shit tomorrow than it will today. So as business owners, what do we got to do to combat that for our business, or to keep us whole? What are we doing? We're talking about price, or we're talking about delivery? Who's up first?
I'm going to go first. And it's been a topic of conversation for many of our clients, right? Is like, how do you get ahead of it? Or what are you going to do based off of your customer service, right? So for me, again, being more product-based, you're going to have to be very mindful of, first, are you getting the best value yourself from your distributor supplier? And if you aren't, again, grind them a bit. But realistically, we live, especially in the West here, in excess. So if you want to talk about restaurants, there's only so much money that is here right now. And like you just mentioned, Mitch, it's depreciating, although it doesn't seem that way. I would say, a 25-ounce steak is going to go away completely because it just doesn't make sense. Or what's going to happen is that 25-ounce steak now has bone in, and you'll see that a lot. And you've probably seen it a lot right now in some of the higher end protein establishments, is that it's all bone in, which actually is a better product, but it's allowing them to kind of hide what the true protein size is, right? So for me, again, there's only so much money. Utilities are going up, everything else is going up. So when you go out and you get a want rather than a need, you're going to have to be probably pretty price conscious. Therefore, you're going to need to take the portion size, whether or not it's product or service. The offering's going to need to shrink.
Okay. Who else has got a take on this?
Also be in creativity, wouldn't you say, Matt? Because as your suppliers are increasing your price, your customers are only willing to pay so much. So I think it comes also down to what's the creativity you can do within your menu in making slight adjustments on that side too, right?
Right. If I may, like 2 years ago, a $25 hamburger was like a no-fly zone. Like there's no way that people will buy it. Standard practice right now. Like if you go out to a full dining experience restaurant and you order a burger, it's $25. Crazy to me, but
Yeah, even the fast food places are, if you don't bring a coupon in, it's like, what do you mean these two standard fast food burgers are $25 or $30? It's like, what happened? It's two special meals and it's $30. It's like, well, you didn't have the coupon, sir.
To beat the inflation, it's like, you have to save somewhere, cut somewhere in order to, either offer for the same price or raise the price. So otherwise, you have to stay afloat. So whatever way you choose to do, that's the way, I guess, for any business to decide. But at the same time, when I'm looking like, okay, we're fighting the inflation, what about, let's say we're starting to raise prices. Obviously, we've seen less people can afford them. Let's say, the example of the same, like restaurant, right? who would want to go to that restaurant and pay that amount of money if they can just, find some other options, cheaper options, right? For example. But what if, talking about the coupon, what if we offer that discount at the same time without raising the prices, offer the discount, and perhaps there's a way to bring more people in that way, just to create that extra cash flow that you might be missing by, hoping when you raise the prices, you're gonna get that amount back, but in reality, it wouldn't happen. So discounts might be an option as well to consider. So.
Lorette?
So increasing your volume. Yeah, I like that.
I have things to say, but I'm not sure how they're going to be said. So like buying things is freedoms, right? So like when you exchange goods and services, you use your right as a freedom, right? But the buyer beware principle has come in since like the 80s or the 60s. I don't know. But like you're a buyer, you have freedom to buy whatever you want. Are you understanding your risk? Exactly what Mitch was saying. Like just even the definition of buyer beware tells the potential purchaser that it seeks greater protection for its own investigations, inspections, and provide inquiries. So like it's your responsibility to do your homework. I guess that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah. Sometimes you're locked in, Lorette. Like if I need gas in my vehicle to go to work every day, I can maybe save a few cents, go to, one low provider or the other, but I'm stuck. Maybe I had to think early on and buy a more economical vehicle, but maybe I need a truck for my job. I'm a construction guy or something. So I'm trapped in some of those things. Certainly lots of other items, luxury items, this and that.
It was your freedom to be trapped in that. That's like my point, though. You've chosen to be trapped in that. You've chosen to sign that contract. Too bad. Like I don't know how else to say that.
Maybe you should have kept the older truck, and
right?
You wouldn't have had a payment and the gas bill.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting point too, because we're seeing a shift. Now we talk about experiences or stuff we can do from a business perspective for a moment, but who's looked at the price of used vehicles in the last little bit, right? I had this comment this week talking to, I can't remember, Don, was it you and I that were talking about? I talked to somebody this week and I said, listen, in fact, Don, I think it might have been you and I looked at my vehicle and it's in my mind aging out and I'd like to buy a new one, right? I do pretty good. I can afford the payments, buy one flat out, not really, but dealerships aren't carrying an awful lot of new inventory as well. So I looked before Christmas idly because occasionally you get bored and you window shop. And I looked at the value of my vehicle for resale or trade, and the trade or resale value was still less than the financing I'm carrying. I looked last week. The resale price on my vehicle in the used market right now, same year, same mileage, is $9,000 higher than it was in December. I can sell mine privately right now for more money than the amount of my financing left over. Great, I can sell my car privately and have cash. Problem is, I don't got another car to buy, right? Am I buying another used vehicle? So to Lorette's point, that might be something that we have to make considerations on. What is really important right now? Now, what is important for us personally? What is important for our household or our lifestyle? What has to get you from point A to point B? Not saying to eliminate, the potential for luxury or joy, but what is that end use to your customer or your client? What's the minimum viable product? Maybe we have to look at where our price is right now and what the minimum viable product, and you've got to adjust both. I want to stay on this topic for a moment because I think there's a little more that we could say in there before I go on to the next one. But we are at a point where decisions we make on business now can have repercussions for years. Really could. And that could be viability, that could be cash flow, that could be your family's care and feeding. It could be everything. Do you have to have a cheaper price? Do you have to adjust what the product is? Or is it the other side of things where you start to ramp it up, where you start to add so much more value to it that the value proposition, the amount of things and stuff that comes in the pile that you sell is worth somebody else using a depreciating pile of cash and a depreciating value on, because there's just more intrinsic value or tangible value in your pile of stuff as opposed to somebody else's. Vehicles as an instance, vehicle manufacturers, and this had nothing to do with the pandemic, started to add more and more and more services and actually started to kill the secondary service industry because of it. Now, you might think of it as getting ripped off for a moment, but if you get a service plan, a maintenance plan, now we all know you should never get the undercarriage coating, right, when you buy a new vehicle. But if you get a service plan and maintenance plan, how delicious is it to think you'll never have a repair bill or even a tire repair? And all you got to do is add gas and windshield washer fluid. And if you decided you're lazy and you get the right maintenance plan, you pull up to the quick serve window and they'll replace your washer fluid for you if you happen to be driving by. So you don't even buy that anymore. You just put gas in your car and you drive it. If something terrible happens, they'll tow it for you for free and include roadside assistance. They'll put a kit in the back. They'll give you a branded blanket. They'll give you a whole bunch of stuff going around. You got pets, we'll put a pet mat in the back of your vehicle. So even in that instance, they started to raise the amount of stuff you got for the same price of the vehicle. You're like, well, where's that money being made up? Is it being made up in the financing, made up all over the place? Or they made a tangible decision to say, how do we just differentiate? You know, if our truck is the same as the next dealership over's truck and 2 blocks down is another truck, how do we get somebody to buy our truck? Here's all the extra crap that comes with it. As business owners, do we have to start to wonder what the extras are? The extra tangibles, whether it's a physical product or whether it's additional services, et cetera, that have to be included. So now our price point doesn't change, but it means you might be doing more work. Thoughts?
I think the business owners do themselves a disservice by not addressing the price increase issue. I had a good conversation with somebody at Chamber of Commerce yesterday, and he says, I've just not increased my prices in 4 years, and I really have a tough time. And I said, you know, he's selling water and cups and coffee to coffee shops. And he said, the price of my cups went up 40%, you know, so now it's almost the dollar just for the empty cup at the coffee place for the cup. And I said, you have to increase your prices. He said, it's just going to be tougher later on because you're going to have to, if you wait, it's a 15 or 20% increase. If you do it now, it's maybe 3 and 5, and maybe in 3 months, it's 3 and 5 or whatever. You know, it's too big to swallow. That's when the customer looks at it and goes, hey, that's too big. I'm going to find a new supplier and look around. But if you sort of keep up with the increases and get over that head problem that, you know, I can't increase my prices, you know, it keeps you out of trouble a little bit. So got to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a you problem. This is a money problem. So, you know, I agree with you, Don. It's take you out of the scenario and let's run the numbers.
Yeah.
You know, let's take the emotion, let's take your thought out of it. You're overthinking that. You know, I'll go back to 2008 after the housing collapse. That's when I started to notice things starting to shrink. That was the first part. So did anybody else notice that things were shrinking at that time? See, that's how you know, it's the thief in the night. You don't see it happening. You know, if you haven't had a pay raise in the last 5 years and the average rate of inflation is at 3%, how much have you lost?
Mm-hmm.
How much purchasing power have you lost? And that's what it's difficult because it's not in front of us. Yeah. And so households now are going, I'm making decent money. It's a 2-income household. We're making 120 grand, but the money's running out and I still have month left. What's going on? And that's where I think, you know, as coaches and you know, box lunch is to bring that and put a spotlight on that and go, if you're not getting an increase of 3% or higher on your income, on your end of the day, on your investments, you are losing money. You are losing ground, period. Yeah. So how can you, and I think that comes back to Mitch's question, is how can you get ahead? I love the value add. And he said it before I could, because I was thinking exactly the same thing. How can you increase your price, but still add that extra little bit of value? And Don, you're right. You know, be the no name dropping your Starbucks. They're going to shrink their cups and they're going to increase their price. You know it's going to happen. We're used to it. We're used to the big guys doing that. We know it's coming. So don't think about it. Just do it. Just follow what the big guys do.
Yeah. Yulia Lorette, final thoughts?
This is a hard conversation today. Like, value proposition is always, what is the value, right? So like, that's the wrestle within self is what is your value? What is the value that you bring to the table? And so I don't have necessarily wisdom to embark on this, but it's just like the why or the value or the what. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and if
So
I'm,
like, do you know what you bring to the table? Are you talking to? Go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to kind of highlight both Don and Paul mentioned like it really has to be about the value add, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean more things, right? So like I had a in-depth conversation with an insurance broker and he's like, Matt, like we, again, the slow burn. So you increase price, maybe decrease a product size here, there, and everywhere. But like in a year like this year, there's no way that they can hide it, right? Like they had a long-term client, like decades long client that they saw that 3%, 5% increase. This year, it was like literally 130%, right? So their insurance like for their corporation was like 30 grand 2 years ago, and now it's 80.
Wow.
Well, no matter what you do, how are you going to build in that type of value? So I think you also need to preface the conversations right now saying, listen, it's all bad news, right? And again, like if you look in the media, of course, it's all bad news. That's what sells papers or click-throughs, whatever you want to call it, right? But when you as the business operator have to go to the consumer directly, look them in the eyes and say, listen, it's going to be bad news, but at least I'm going to prepare you for it now. We're going to plan for it. Maybe we'll touch in or chime in with your business coach and your bookkeeper and your accountant and all these people together, and let's come up with a plan because you need insurance. I can only provide you what's available to us, and it's 80 grand. So what are we going to do about it, right? So if you have those conversations now, I think that at least you can, provide them a little bit of reassurance or that broker of certainty to say, listen, we're here, we're in it. You can't change it. How are we going to move forward?
Well, and a conversation is a conversation. So like I'm closing a deal with a private institution and they're like, we can't pay you. You charge too much. I'm like, yeah, because I'm value, because I get the job done, because my clients get and create careers. So I'm just like, listen, we're not done this conversation, but like, yes, it's about the money, but it's about the value proposition that I give to you. So I'm like, that's fine that you can reject my offer, but now we have to have another conversation about what the offer actually is. So again, it's value proposition and what works for both parties.
Yeah, you don't have to be like afraid or ashamed to raise the prices because that's where the world is heading. So you have to stay on float, and it's no brainer. I wouldn't be, if I go to that business and I see price increase, like, well, what can you do? If you need the service, you're gonna pay. So it's the same like setting up the prices for like new businesses in the first place. So they're like, oh, if I overcharge or this. So that's the way, like, if you want to be in business, you have to do what needs to be done already, like do it or, stay away and close the business down and do whatever you feel it's right. So
there was a good example of that with Loblaws. You talked about chips, right? Because Loblaw says, Frito-Lay, I'm not accepting your price increase, so our shelves are all going to go bare. But if every other store has Frito-Lay at you're just going to go there and buy it. They're just going to lose out. I mean, they can hold off for a little bit, maybe try and negotiate. But if the cost of the materials to make these products has gone up, and they got to pass it on. I applaud Loblaws for saying, let's make sure it's fair. And I want to see your, where your costs went up. Show me where the suppliers went from this to this. I find that totally justified. But in the end, you're probably still stuck with it because they'll show you. It's like, we don't want to increase our stuff and make it less competitive. Who wants that? But there are the odd person that's out there gouging. They're taking advantage of it. They don't really have a reason to increase prices, but everybody else is. So it's good to kind of dig in and make sure your suppliers are doing it honestly.
Mm-hmm. To your point, Don, and this is an interesting one. Who here noticed, and I mentioned this actually in a conversation with my wife the other day, you go to the grocery store and depending on where you are, and I live in a smaller community right outside of Edmonton. So for the rest of the world, I live in Leduc, which is just outside of Edmonton, major metropolis. And when I go to one of my local grocery stores, there's always something notable that's kind of missing or really low, or the cereal aisle, how everything's spread out and stuff like that. But to Don's commentary about Loblaws and some of the junk food, we all love potato chips and pop for a moment. It's weird how the potato chip and pop aisle is never understocked, right? So where's the real value there? The candy aisle's never lean. The pop and chip aisle is never lean. Never lean. Now we're going, okay, that's the cheap stuff and the banal stuff, and that's the stuff we all love and we all get addicted to, and blah 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 blah. You know what else isn't really lean? When I go to deli in that store and I look at the really expensive stuff. Now there's the cheap lunch meat in the back, over by the regular meat counter. In fact, there's a long meat department. And there's 2 coolers for deli that has got the prepackaged bologna and all that stuff. And then you go to the actual deli with the giant glass cases and where they cut your meat. They got cheese and they got the hot and cold dishes and the different dips and all this other stuff. And they got a wall banquette where they've got different other stuff that's prepackaged but higher end. You can get your salami and your prosciutto and all this other wonderful stuff. And then they got this middle kiosk that is pretty much just full of cheese. I don't know what the hell else is in there. I know there's a little bit of dip on one side. There's hummus and other cool stuff. But that thing is probably 80% cheese from all over the world. And they never don't have really expensive cheese. But if I go to the cereal aisle, and if they didn't make bread in the store, the stuff they ship in might be a little leaner. If I go to meat and they cut all their own meat, there's no problems there. But the price of hamburgers shrunk, right? So it's interesting to know, if we go back to commentary that's run through as a vein here, what value does when you change the way people perceive the value. Now you don't bat an eye at paying, I don't know, $7 or $10 or $12 or $15 or $20 for, who the hell buys $20 in cheese? It better be a giant brick. It ain't. It's little. It's a tiny little circle like this. It's about this thick. Comes in wax. Some of them come at Christmas in a mitt shape. Others come in a heart shape at Valentine's Day. I've seen a green shamrock, right? Paul?
Yes, I was just saying, cheese log, Christmas. Woohoo!
Cheese log at Christmas. So changing the way people perceive that value is going to be really important for us.
So Mitch, are you alluding to the disparity that's happening between rich and poor, and we're wiping out the money on the middle class?
Things are definitely
Sure, why not? Let's go down that path. Let's do that. Now, I've got a window open, and part of our theme today is actually themes or trends that we're starting to see in 2022. And one of them has to do with inflation, obviously, because that is centric to all of our consumerism, but all of commercial-based business, right? And one of the major parts that comes up is supply chain. And we've beaten supply chain to death in here. In fact, you're like, I've never heard you guys talk about supply chain. We've done it like 6 times in the last 5 months. Okay. We've exhausted supply chain. If you want 5 hours of supply chain, go check out previous episodes in season 2 or check out the tail end of season 1. We've done supply chain. We got some really smart people in supply chain, Don and Matt. We got really smart supply chain people here. So we ain't going back there. But the second one down on that list is sustainability. Right? What is sustainability? The ability for something to continue to move forward, a process. Now, Don's commentary for a moment, and that's what you call a bait statement. And if this was regular social media, we'd call it clickbait. So we're going to talk about the 5 reasons why there's a growing disparity between the wealthy and the poor, and the middle class is getting wiped out. Ooh, solid. I want to read that, right? I want to hear these assholes argue about that. Love it. But sustainability is a really important function or feature. Now, that is not just a rich and poor thing for a moment. That's any business thing. So, yeah, you can buy fancy cheese, but you can also buy, Don's commentary for a moment. And my brother, I love you for that. Chips ain't any more expensive. So you can still buy cheap potato chips. You can still buy cheap pop. They'll still sell you 2 liters on sale for $3 or $4. You don't have problems getting that, but you also don't have problems buying $20 cheese. Right? So maybe it's only built for the rich and the poor, but they've certainly figured out sustainability. They've certainly figured out something to do with pricing. Now, it could just be that the shelves are stocked with chips and pop and cheese that nobody's going to buy. But all you have to do is have a long weekend like we just did, walk into the same grocery store and realize that the pop and chip aisle is going to get looted. And weirdly, so is the deli and the expensive cheese. But by Monday or Tuesday, we don't have any problems finding expensive cheese or chips and pop, right?
It's a dip.
So sustainability, let's talk about that. And then we could go down the disparate class system that is being developed. And we'll go down that path. Why the hell not? Let's do this, right? It's going to be right versus the left. Once again, be prepared. Always be prepared.
I've been kind of chomping at the bit here. So I would say this. Like every time I rarely walk into a grocery store because I was one of the first ones to fully commit to this click and order type thing, right? And I found it's better for us because we don't have to worry about looking down every time I'm in like the dairy aisle and I look at the different types of milk. And I was like, I don't understand. Like, isn't there just skim, 1, 2, homo, whatever you want to call all of the, but like there's 50 different types of milk. That needs to be chopped in half. Like, or even less, because like, how are they able to produce this? Like from a supplier standpoint, even with the chips, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see the top tier items be produced and the other stuff is going to go away because you can't manufacture all of these items, right? Like the orange juice, same thing. Like, how is there 15 types of orange juices, right? Like pulp, no pulp, vitamin D, vitamin A, this, that, like what? I squeeze oranges, right? So I think that we are going to see a lot of those aisles shrink, or, you know, I guess I hope we don't get into a class type fight where, you know, my wife being Italian will go to the, we pretend that we're rich aisle for the cheeses because Parmesan cheese is $50 an ounce. Or am I going to go and get the marble cheese because it makes sense because I love nachos, right? Like, so now you're going to need to look at how your budgets reflect the price points out there. And Mitch, you mentioned like ground beef. It's those things like, yeah, you can still find a package of $6 for $6, but it's half of the weight of what it was a year ago, right? So I think that you're going to see these manufacturers really identify what their high profit, high margin items are. And you're going to see more of that. The other stuff is going to be chopped in half for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Rest of the crew, thoughts before we let Dawn open up the can of worms about class warfare?
Sustainability is really a mindset thing, and it's an alignment thing with like heart, mind, and soul. So on Disney, I've been watching this show called The Mick, which is like this girl that like super poor, her sister's super rich, but has to go to jail. So then she has to look after her like sister's children. So then all of a sudden she's not rich, but she lives rich and she still has like her ghetto ways. And I'm like, super ludicrous to even watch this, but I'm like, oh my goodness, there's a mindset behind being poor and there's a mindset behind being rich. What is the mindset behind? Do you know what I mean? So I'm not really going to answer the question, but sustainability is creating it within yourself and really understanding what's going on around you.
Yeah, I was actually, I want to add to that because I'm thinking a little bit the same way. Well, in general, like sustainability is a broad term, right? Like, and it's exactly like what we, like how we treat it and how we, you know, decided for ourselves. But it's also like rich people problems, right? When it comes to so many varieties. And I'm not saying us as people, but the whole like Canadian nation, let's say at this point, let's just consider that because yeah, we have so many options and we spoiled, I guess. Let's look at countries that barely have any water supply. So, I mean, at some point, I don't know if it happens, like as Matt is saying, it's gonna be divided like half and the rest will disappear, go away. I don't know, because more businesses open up, more brands gonna wanna enter the stores, markets. I don't know if that's gonna happen. And like people as a nation, we overconsumption is like, there's no end to it. Like those landfills, I mean, like, I don't know, it definitely starts with each and everyone, like, and goes from there. So, and whatever you decide for yourself, how you wanna shop, it's only your choice. As long as you have a choice, you can make your own. So,
Dawn, Paul, thoughts?
I say we're in the land of no choice. these costs and things are being driven up or just forced upon us, and the disparity between your income and the cost of goods is not keeping up, right? So we're just straddling with the house prices that we have to pay now compared to 20 years ago. Like what happened to those houses that they became 3 or 4 times as the expense that they were back then? And your wages didn't keep up. So it was like, what's happening to all this price costing that's putting in it? And I think that all creates a lot of angst in us as we feel like it's out of our control and things are just happening. But like Matt alludes, we keep shrinking this or we cut that or whatever, and it just sort of slips in. And so we're slowly just thinking, oh, it must be my fault. I don't have enough money to buy all this stuff anymore. And it's like, hey, your money's losing, it's going backwards. Or for, like Paul alludes, if you got your money in a GIC making 2% and inflation is 7%, you're losing 5% every year. You just didn't realize that you're going backwards. So cost up, your money's devaluing. It's like, we're in a tough spot. We gotta be smart and figure it out.
Yeah, we have several forces at work. I'll go back to 2008 again. I mean, in our big monopoly world of how much money we had about 800 billion before the crash of 2008. In order to save the entire financial market, money had to be printed to save it. So the decision was made at the minute to midnight before everything came apart. They ended up printing about 3 trillion in and around there. 3 trillion. This is the first time we heard the word trillion. And what's the difference between a billion and a trillion? Just sounds like more. It's dramatically more. It's huge, right? And now they're tossing around, stimulus of this trillion and this trillion. So the race really started in 2008. And if you look back, you can see how much money kept coming into our system, but we didn't see any inflation. Why? Because the money didn't come to us. It wasn't like these checks for COVID. It didn't go to the street. So we reduced interest rates, we printed more money, but it stayed in more of the financial institutions. It stayed at the higher levels. That money went into the stock market. That's why the stock market is where it's at today. And the stock market used to be an indicator of health. It's not anymore. It's completely out of whack. It does not indicate the health of what's going on. So we've had some disconnects. The other part is technology. As technology increases, it's deflationary, meaning it's cheaper and cheaper to produce. Our phones, the cameras in our phones used to be about $600 to put a camera in a phone. Now it's about $6 and it works better. Soon, a lot of this technology is free. So it's deflationary force, meaning it's putting pressure on workers, on employment, because now technology is moving to the next level of taking jobs over. So they don't have to pay you more. So we have less jobs, less income, higher prices, more money in our game. So you're right, Don, we're completely getting squeezed on both sides. So what are our choices and what are our options moving forward so that we can stay ahead of this? Because it's here to stay and it's only going to pick up speed.
You posed a question, and I say you should ask that question to the guy with the big beard and the axe. What are we to do, Mitch?
I'm gonna answer a math question first before we go back to the axe for a moment. So Paul asked a question: what is a trillion compared to a billion? Here's the math at home: spend $1 million a day to get to $1 billion. It's going to take you how long? 1,000 days spending $1 million a day to spend $1 billion. If you spend $1 million a day, it's going to take you 2,740 years to spend $1 trillion. What the F?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you want to know how big that number is, if you spend $1 million a day, it's going to take you 3 years to spend $1 billion. If you spend $1 million a day, it's going to take you 2,000 years to spend $1 trillion. That's the difference in what we did, which is why inflation is doing this. So did we choose the axe or the dollar? Don, let's talk class warfare for a moment. No, let's not talk class warfare for a moment.
That's a whole show.
That's an entire show by itself. Next time on Virtual Business Box Lunch, class warfare. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Which side are you on? Let's start creating the social divide right now. Now, we talked sustainability today, but Don, I mean, everyone's alluded to it. Everybody's commented on it. One of the other major trends in 2022, and it is not a disruption in the market, but let's go back to potato chips, pop, or cheese for a moment. And Yulia said it first in the midst of our rant about sustainability, which was entrepreneurhood. So if Matt's point is true and we wipe out half the providers, right now, more people are starting businesses right now than any other time in history. And they're doing it everywhere. There's more breweries, there's more restaurants. And in fact, in an industry like food service for a moment where failure is even higher than regular business right now, how many more restaurants, food trucks, food service related industries have started? How many food providers, how many manufacturers, how many home-based businesses doing baked goods, doing cheese, doing wine or mead? The number of breweries, micro and otherwise, that have started in our neighborhood in the last year is staggering. People clearly want to get drunk to forget their pain, but they're also investing in other things, right?
Moonshiners.
Exactly. Well, no. These people are doing it legally. Well, then again, moonshine is not illegal in Alberta. So I guess, hey, bring it on, right? You make whatever you want. We can also make some pretty good gin here too, if we think about it. But right climate for the right kind of berry. But entrepreneurhood is going to start. So before we start an entire episode on class warfare, and because sustainability and pricing is really important, we've got a handful of minutes left. Let's everybody give somebody a 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 point checklist. Here's the crap you got to pay attention to, because inflation ain't going away. Price isn't going to go back down. It's not. It is not going back down. No, get used to it. Get used to it. And we've still got repercussions coming in our marketplace because of all of that stuff. So if you're thinking entrepreneurhood as a form of sustainability or disruption in the market, there's an opportunity, and you're going to be part of the have and not the have not. In other words, when half of the cheese aisle that Matt loves so much gets wiped out, you're going to be one of the new cheese providers. What are the things that people got to watch out for? Because the inflation isn't going away. Sustainability issues are becoming more prevalent. And sustainability is not just whether or not you got green energy or recycled or whatever it is. Sustainability is your business's ability to navigate forward, to have a good supply line, to have good production, to pay the right kind of employees, to have a price that matches what the market's willing to place or to pay, to be able to increase the value that you add into your product or your service so that people are willing to pay it, even if it's more. Whether you sell $20 cheese or whether you sell $2 potato chips, your value proposition, what people think they're getting for the price they're paying, has to exceed what the price is worth out of the depreciating money in their pocket. Because $20 cheese today still has a $20 price tag a month ago, but you have to actually earn more to buy $20 worth of cheese now. That's frightening. You got to earn more to buy $2 of potato chips. So let's give them a little set of marching orders from everybody. Pay attention to this, watch over this, or here's what you got to be really mindful of navigating forward. Because after all, we're all entrepreneurs, and this is stuff that we have to pay attention to every day too, right? We can't be so clever that we're not doing this for ourselves. So what do people got to do to go forward so that they can be part of the haves and the new wave of $20 cheese, as opposed to, and this is not a diatribe to say whether or not you should start a cheese company, or maybe you should, right? But what do we got? Let's give them something to work with.
Sounds like Mitch will be your best customer. Talking about cheese.
$20 cheese.
I'll go first.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Lorette, go ahead.
Do some personal development work. Ask yourself some questions, right? So, what do you want? Period. Right? The hardest question is actually what do you want? But once you know it, you can get it. And then wants and what's important to you. So, like, understand what's important to you. So, if family and friends is important to you, hang out with your family and friends, right? And then understand your values, play in your values. Honestly, for me, business is values, and like matching my values with other people so that I have a strong bond with people. So like I play in like sense of purpose. Why am I living today? Like that's what career development is understanding what you're doing. So I teach my clients to like hang out in their values, play in their values. Faith for me is really important. Integrity is really important. And like humor, enjoy the day. So like we all get caught up on this, and this, but are you actually enjoying today? Is today important to you? So that's what I would say is do some personal development work.
Well put.
I also think that you touched on this, Lorette, the you want versus need, right? So you're going to have to create a new form of budget. And like for some of us, we hate doing those type of things, right? But now's the time. So defining what you want versus what you need, right? And then from there, okay, well, maybe I'm going to get this $20 cheese this week, but we don't have it in the budget to do the other stuff. So as a family unit or as a corporation, really redefine the why. And then from there, how does that look? Which is, we've been forced to change for so long right now that people are really tired of that. They're like, listen, my lights turn on. I don't want to have to look at a new provider. Guess what? Look at a new provider, because you're probably being raked over the coals right now, right? So those type of items just go that much further, get that much more tired because you've ran a marathon. Don't stop 500 meters before the finish line, because that's the most important. You got to have that last kick. Look at your utilities and your expense lines. Look at what you're producing and how that actually will work for you. And again, like, constriction is okay. So if you have 10,000 square feet of warehouse space, you know you don't need that right now. So if you can offset some of those prices by either moving to a new space or finding partnerships to fill those spaces up, right? And I think that will be key for success moving on.
Okay, Yulia?
Yeah, I would say during the COVID, many businesses been through a lot of things and pivoting, but right now I would say just still be prepared for change, to make a change, or be prepared to change, because change would be coming, as we know, considering the global economy and considering the situation in Europe. So it seems like we're far away from there, but we still living in one big world, and it will affect no matter, like, it will affect eventually. And yeah, so it just doesn't mean we are there and nothing's gonna happen. So it will catch up here as well. So
Don?
I think every business, we're all entrepreneurs, we need to really evaluate whether we have a good, a great, unique selling proposition, as you mentioned, Mitch. And if you can't come up with something that's unique and special about your product or business, then you have to really evaluate whether you should continue with it. Imagine you're standing in front of the Dragon's Den and you say, I make such and such a widget, and they're all going to go, well, what's special about you? You know, what's special about your brewery? There's a brewery on every other block downtown. Is it like, my beer tastes different? Really? You know, this guy has 100 different beers on his tap. Like, how are you going to stand out? And if you don't, like, let's think about why you're going into business, not just because you got pushed out of your company or this or that. You need something special to talk about. So make sure you got it, or find it, or develop it.
Paul?
Strategy. Where are we at? Where are we going? Are we going to see higher inflation? Yes. So is there things that you need to lock in so that you're going to lock in those lower rates? What's your supply? Your supply chain. You know, where is that at? Have you figured that shit out? Sales is Walmart principle is one person buying 40% of your product. Might be a danger. Might be coming back to you going, I need you to chop your costs. So you got to spread out who you're selling to. Your network. Who are you networking with? Man, things are opening up. Get your ass outside and start networking. Coffees, lunches, groups, whatever it is. The network is going to help with your solution. And also, who's your competition? Are you sitting down and talking with your competition? Can you work with your competition? Just because you sell the same thing doesn't mean you actually sell the same thing, and you can actually work together. So, yeah, let's do it. Let's kick ass. Come on.
Love it. Tribe, you're giving it. And I'm going to summarize. Get a good tribe around you. Get a good community of people. They don't have to be in the same business, same industry. They can be something completely disparate. They don't even have to buy what you've got. Get a good tribe around you. As a testament, my business has flourished and grown in the midst of a pandemic because I invested in people. I invested in relationships. I don't make any more money than I did a month ago or a year ago or 2 years ago. But I'll tell you what, I have a lot more opportunities because I invested in relationships. Next, think sideways. If your product or service can't differentiate, to Don's point right away, then what makes you more valuable for somebody to spend money on you instead of that? If you haven't thought about that in a little while or have never thought about it at all, you'd better figure it out now, because somebody else with a different brand of $20 cheese that's got a better story is going to sell their cheese or the $2 potato chips and wipe you out. That's the story of Coca-Cola. Somebody that wanted to do Coca-Cola as a product and wanted to buy it in bulk was told no. And that's where you get RC brand cola, Royal Crown. It's been around for 80 years because Coke said, we don't want to do business with you. Guy got pissed off and built his own pop. So there was always opportunity to compete in a space where you didn't think you could actually be. Next, if you decide that it's going to be food or anything like that, you don't have to have a brick and mortar anymore. There's ghost kitchens, shared ideas, building vendor relationships with major retail stores, etc., selling products and sauces and meat, etc. There's lots of small and boutique places. If you're in meat or you're in cheese or you're in sauces or you're in rubs or you're in small prepared food ahead of time, you can sell it into 100 small delis, meat shops, or butchers. They will take your stuff gladly because they always want to promote local. So you have to start to think differently about the way you want your business to be framed or how you're going to get paid. Because, and this is a moment, this is not a class distinction. This is not a rich versus poor distinction. There is still money to be made. And whether you like the system or not, you're going to need money. And right now you need more just to buy the same $2 chips or $20 cheese as you did 6 months ago. And if you haven't made any more money than you did 6 months ago, you're behind by 7%. Your paycheck still says $30 an hour. Take 7 points off of that. That's $2.10 less value you can spend in the marketplace. It's like your boss came back and said, no, I'm going to pay you $27.90 an hour instead of $30 an hour, and you're going to be happy with it. No, the dollar figure on your paycheck didn't change. How much you could actually buy with it did. You might as well have taken it off, but if your boss did that, that'd be business suicide. So don't take away money from your employees, actually pay them more. Mitch, I don't have enough money. Change your price. Look at the way you value your product, right? Look to expand your market. To Paul's point, if your market can get 80% or 60% or 50% attraction based on its price and its value proposition in your marketplace, your target audience, then you're only sales and marketing away from getting there. People that get paid more are happier and do more work. If you invest in them, they will produce more output for the same amount of work. I don't know how many times we're going to beat this drum to death, but we are in a disruption market. We are in a sustainability poor marketplace. And we are in everything's moving sideways on us right now, faster than we can keep up. And the dollar in your pants is worth less than it was yesterday. So how many more excuses do you need to give yourself before you do something really productive? Dawn, Lorette, Yulia, I love you guys. Thank you so much. As always, that is Tribe. I heart you guys, and you make this happen every week. Paul and Matt, I couldn't do this without you. You are the wind beneath my wings and my good shield arm when it's time to bring out the axes. And I love that to pieces. And yeah, I'm swinging an axe around on live on YouTube. That's okay. There's worse crap out there in this world, but nothing better than the information we bring in. Dawn, Lorette, Yulia, love you. Paul and Matt, let's keep rocking it. I'm Mitch Kamich. Today, I'm the broker of certainty. This is the MCC Virtual Business Box Lunch. February 25th of 2022 is in the can. We will see you next week, next time on here, where we talk about the week that was in business, the stuff that comes out. And of course, as always, I don't tell anybody what we're going to talk about ahead of time, so you can hear it hot and fresh coming in. To our live audience, thank you for joining us today. Don't be afraid to comment. And to those people that see it in the coming weeks, months, and years, you're going to get some really good stuff here. And this might just be a time machine of a really disruptive but interesting time in history. And next week, according to Dawn, class warfare. Let's do it. All right, let's get after it.